The summer of 1914 was warm across Europe. People went about their daily lives, unaware of the storm gathering. Tensions had been building for years. All that was needed was a single spark. This spark came on a sunny June morning in Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was on an official visit. He and his wife Sophie were in an open-topped car. Many in Bosnia resented Austro-Hungarian rule. The Black Hand plotted to assassinate the Archduke. Their first attempt on June 28th failed. A bomb missed the Archduke's car. The Archduke continued his visit. Security was surprisingly lax. After the town hall reception, a route change was decided. The driver took a wrong turn onto Franz Josef Street. Gavrilo Princip was on that street corner. Princip seized his chance and fired, killing both the Archduke and his wife. Europe at the beginning of the 20th century was a continent divided. Two major alliance systems had formed over the preceding decades. These alliances were meant to provide security and maintain a balance of power. However, they also created a situation where a conflict between two nations could quickly escalate. The first major bloc was the Triple Alliance, formed in 1882. This united Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Each member promised to support the others if they were attacked by another major power. Opposing the Triple Alliance was the Triple Entente. This was a more loosely defined series of agreements between Great Britain, France, and Russia. France and Russia had formed a strong military alliance in 1894, driven by mutual suspicion of Germany. Great Britain, initially pursuing a policy of splendid isolation, gradually moved closer to France and Russia. The existence of these two armed camps made diplomacy incredibly fragile. A crisis in one region could trigger a cascade of military mobilizations. When Austria-Hungary issued its ultimatum to Serbia after the assassination, the alliances began to click into place. The intricate network of promises designed for defense was now dragging Europe inexorably towards a devastating conflict. Beyond the immediate trigger of the assassination and the entangling alliances, deeper currents were pushing Europe towards war. One of the most powerful forces was nationalism. In Germany, a newly unified and powerful nation, nationalism was particularly potent. Many Germans felt their country deserved a place in the sun, a greater empire and more influence on the world stage, challenging established powers like Britain and France. This fervent nationalism was closely linked to imperialism. The major European powers had spent decades competing for colonies and influence across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. Germany, a latecomer to colonial expansion, felt disadvantaged and sought to expand its overseas territories. Another critical factor was militarism. The belief that a nation should maintain a strong military capability and be prepared to use it aggressively to defend or promote national interests. This led to an unprecedented arms race, particularly between Great Britain and Germany. These forces, nationalism, imperialism, and militarism, created a volatile atmosphere in Europe. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand on 28 June 1914 set off a month of intense diplomatic activity, known as the July Crisis. Austria-Hungary, convinced of Serbian complicity, was determined to punish its smaller neighbour. They sought backing from their powerful ally, Germany. Kaiser Wilhelm II and his government offered Austria-Hungary unconditional support, the infamous blank check. This assurance emboldened Vienna to issue a harsh ultimatum to Serbia on 23 July. The ultimatum contained demands so severe that Serbia could not fully accept them without sacrificing its sovereignty. Serbia, counselled by Russia, responded to the ultimatum in a conciliatory manner, accepting most of the demands but rejecting a few key points. This partial rejection was enough for Austria-Hungary. On 28 July 1914, exactly 1 month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. This declaration triggered the complex machinery of European alliances. Russia, as Serbia's protector, ordered a partial mobilization of its vast army. Germany viewed Russian mobilization as a direct threat. When Russia refused to halt its mobilization, Germany declared war on Russia on 1 August. Bound by its alliance with Russia, France began to mobilize its own forces. On 4 August 1914, Great Britain declared war on Germany. In August 1914, as war erupted across Europe, a common belief prevailed among soldiers and civilians alike. The war would be over by Christmas. Young men flocked to recruitment offices, eager for adventure and glory, fearing they might miss the fighting. This optimism was based on the experiences of previous European wars, which had often been swift and decisive. Germany's Schlieffen Plan aimed to defeat France within 6 weeks, allowing Germany to then turn its full attention to Russia in the east. The initial German advances into Belgium and France seemed to confirm these expectations. The German army, well-trained and equipped, pushed relentlessly forward. The French army, dressed in conspicuous bright blue and red uniforms, launched costly and often futile attacks in Alsace-Lorraine. The British Expeditionary Force, though small, fought bravely but was forced to retreat alongside the French. However, the German advance began to lose momentum. Supply lines became overstretched and troops grew exhausted. The Belgians put up unexpectedly stiff resistance, delaying the German timetable. The crucial turning point on the Western Front came with the First Battle of the Marne in early September 1914. As German forces neared Paris, a combined French and British counterattack halted their advance. The German retreat from the Marne signaled the failure of the Schlieffen Plan. The dream of a quick victory was shattered. By the end of 1914, the Western Front had solidified into a vast network of trenches. These were not simple ditches, but complex defensive systems. Life in these trenches was miserable and terrifying. Soldiers endured constant shelling, sniper fire, and the ever-present threat of attack. The conditions were appalling. Mud, cold, damp, and infestations of rats and lice were constant companions. The nature of trench warfare meant that offensive operations were incredibly difficult and resulted in horrific casualties for minimal territorial gain. Generals on both sides struggled to find ways to break the stalemate. They often resorted to massive artillery bombardments, hoping to destroy enemy defenses and demoralize the defenders. The stalemate on the Western Front became the defining image of World War I's brutal and seemingly senseless slaughter. While the Western Front in France and Belgium became the most infamous theatre of World War I, the conflict was truly global. Fighting raged across multiple fronts, drawing in nations from around the world. On the Eastern Front, vast armies clashed over enormous territories. The fighting here was more mobile but no less brutal. Russia suffered immense casualties due to poor leadership and internal instability. Major battles like Tannenberg saw millions engaged. The war also extended to the Middle East, where the Ottoman Empire fought against the British Empire. Key campaigns included the Gallipoli campaign in 1915, a failed Allied attempt to seize the Dardanelles Strait. British forces also fought in Mesopotamia and Palestine. The Arab Revolt, supported by T.E. Lawrence, destabilized Ottoman rule. Colonial territories in Africa and Asia also became battlegrounds. German colonies were attacked by Allied forces, leading to campaigns in East Africa and the Pacific. Japan seized German possessions in China and the Pacific. The British Royal Navy imposed a naval blockade on Germany, aiming to starve it of essential supplies. Germany waged unrestricted submarine warfare with its U-boats, targeting Allied and neutral shipping. By 1917, all the belligerent nations were suffering from extreme war weariness. Years of relentless fighting, staggering casualties, and severe shortages had taken their toll. In Russia, the strain proved too much, leading to 2 revolutions. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk saw Russia cede vast territories. In spring 1918, Germany launched the Ludendorff Offensive. However, the German army was exhausted and overstretched. The Allies, bolstered by American troops, began to counterattack. On 11 November 1918, an armistice was signed, ending the Great War. The First World War brought about changes on an unprecedented scale, leaving deep and lasting scars on the world. The human cost was staggering. Over 9 million soldiers were killed, and more than 20 million were wounded, many maimed for life. Millions of civilians also perished due to fighting, disease, and starvation. Entire generations of young men were decimated in countries like France, Germany, and Britain. The psychological impact on survivors, both soldiers and civilians, was profound. The political map of Europe was radically redrawn. 4 great empires, the German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian, collapsed as a direct result of the war. New nations emerged in Central and Eastern Europe, such as Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Poland, and the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, formally ended the war with Germany, but imposed harsh terms. The war had significant economic consequences. European nations, once the world's creditors, were heavily indebted, particularly to the United States. Socially, the war also brought about changes. Women had taken on new roles in factories and workplaces during the war, contributing to the momentum for women's suffrage in many countries. The Great War fundamentally reshaped the 20th century, and its echoes continue to be felt even today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.